Tēnā tātou katoa, good evening. Help is on the way for 800 families with children who have been living in emergency housing for longer than 3 months.
They'll be pushed to the front of the queue for a state house under a new Priority 1 category announced by the government today. But there'll be a crackdown on who's allowed to access emergency motels.
And the ministers in charge can't give a commitment more people won't end up homeless as a result. Here's political editor Jenna Lynch.
For the last 4 weeks, this has been home for Shelby Smith and her mum and brother.
Bit of a struggle, but it's been alright. Trying to deal with it and just being together with mum's the main thing.
They were in a private rental, never missed a payment, but the rental was sold. They had to leave with nowhere else to go, spending their first night without a home in their car.
It was good though, because we were nice and warm together and it was a comfy car.
Before getting into this emergency motel.
We're still here for another week or so until we're in the list to get a house.
Yeah, you're hoping to get a home.
Hoping to, yeah. But so many people out there trying to find a house at the moment.
Under a new government policy, families who've been living in emergency accommodation longer than 12 weeks will be categorised as Priority 1 on the social housing waitlist.
It is not good enough to have children who are already vulnerable growing up in motels, and that is the end game here.
A glimmer of hope in the desperate search for a home.
We don't know who goes up the top of the list, you know, kids with babies or teenagers like me, or I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that we'd definitely get up the top because a family home would be wonderful at this point.
Emergency motels are the end of the line, filled with families who can't find anywhere else to live. In January, there were almost 6,500 people in emergency housing. Nearly half of those were children. And the government spent more than $24.5 million on emergency grants, almost $800,000 a day.
That's $1 million per day that we're paying for families to live largely in misery and squalor, and we're determined to fix the problem.
Coupled with the fast track for families, a crackdown for everyone else, there will be increased scrutiny of applicants, including whether they've unreasonably contributed to their emergency housing need, like being kicked out of a home, whether they've taken reasonable efforts to find another house, and whether they've previously paid their emergency housing contribution.
Emergency housing will always be there for families who need it as a last resort, but what we have now is a disgrace.
The emergency housing contribution was introduced in October 2020. It requires those who live in emergency motels to contribute 25% of any income they might get as rent. Figures obtained by Newshub under the Official Information Act last year show that from the time of its introduction through to June 2023, just 17 million of the $77 million charged had been paid. That's 22%. The Ministry for Social Development couldn't give us updated figures today. Can you make the commitment that you won't kick anyone out if they've got nowhere to go?
I've got to get into the parliament.
Committed to ending the catastrophic public policy failure of emergency housing. The full details of how, though, yet to be determined.
Well, Jenna joins us now. Kia ora, Jenna. How long before we start to see the impact of these changes?
Well, despite the government promising just last week that they would set targets around this policy, they are now refusing to do so, saying simply that they want to see a reduction in the number of children growing up in motels. They will not give us timeframes or numbers to be held accountable to. They are stressing, though, that this is step one, and the further steps are likely to include social bonding schemes, including having sort of wraparound services for the people in the most housing need. Already there is concern being raised about that extra scrutiny that is being applied to handing out these grants. Carmel Sepuloni, Labour's spokesperson, said that obviously the government is content with more people being rough sleepers. Now, the government obviously disagrees with that. They think the answer to this problem is getting more private landlords involved, getting more people off that state house wait list, off those emergency housing wait lists and into private rentals. They're going to reinstate the 90-day no-cause evictions from tenancies in the hope that landlords might take a chance on more tenants. The question is, are landlords going to do that? Are there enough of them? And are we going to see more people homeless if they don't get these emergency housing grants?
Yes, a lot to digest there, Jenna. Tēnā koe.